Hi, I'm Harry, and today on Harry Talks Cities, we're going to talk about the light rail systems of Houston and Dallas. And while at first glance they appear to be very similar, Houston's has largely been successful, while Dallas's system has not. So today we're going to dive into why that is. Here's the system map for the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Light Rail System, or DART for short. DART has 4 lines, 65 stations, and 1,096 daily riders per mile. When building the system, the city focused on building along rights of way where land was cheap, such as highways, creeks, and industrial areas, in order to serve all the major suburbs of the region, including Carrollton, Plano, and Garland. This meant that popular destinations in dense corridors in Dallas often went unserved by the light rail or had stations on the far edge of the area, inconveniencing those who take the system and forcing possible riders to opt into driving instead. Now here's the system map for the Houston Metro Rail light rail system. Metrorail has 3 lines, 39 stations, but it has 2631 daily riders per mile, way more than Dallas's paltry 1096. When building the system, unlike Dallas, Houston focused on building a shorter system along dense corridors and popular destinations near the center of the city, such as the Medical Center, University of Houston, and the Museum District. Riders could now conveniently travel from downtown to a variety of other walkable destinations via light rail that previously would have only easily been accessible by car. Here on the chart, you can see how the systems seem pretty similar, but the ridership per mile is significantly higher in Houston. So to look at the failure of Dallas's light rail, we're going to look at the DART red line as an example. So it starts all the way up here, out past Richardson, out in Plano. And so even with the very first station, you have a huge issue. It's surrounded by this giant field of parking lots. So if you look at the station, there's basically nothing around it. You can just see parking, a couple small bike rack, but still just endless parking. So you can't really walk or bike or take public transit to the light rail station. You basically have to drive. And then if we go on, the station in downtown Plano looks like it's in a pretty good location. But then you have City Line Bus Station, which is at the intersection of 2 highways, and no one's gonna want to take the train from where 2 highways meet. And then it continues along this highway, Route 75, the next station, again along the highway, right along the highway, and it just continues to follow the highway, follow the highway. And if we look at the station here, there's just a giant parking lot, a small strip mall, but still along the highway, and you basically can't get to anywhere on the other side of the highway. So say you live over here in these like houses over here, you have to walk all the way down to Arapahoe Road and walk across the highway and then up to the station. So it's not very useful. And if we keep going down, there's no stop in downtown Richardson, and instead it just bypasses it and goes to this other stop that's just on a massive road surrounded by parking lots all around it. We have like one building over here. And then it just keeps going, and starts following this creek, Floyd Branch. So you'd think you'd want to have the light rail station over by these buildings over here, right? Or at least up here by this like by these warehouses and auto dealerships or whatever. Some of the people are actually going to go, but instead they decided to build it because it was cheaper next to the this Floyd Branch Creek, and there's a cemetery on the other side over here, and that's just not somewhere people are going to or from. And you have this station right next to the highway and a giant parking lot. Like if we look at it over here, like where are you walking from the station? There's just a giant empty field of dirt, and then there's the station over there. There's absolutely nothing around it. Then if you go farther down, this station isn't by the shopping center over here. Instead, it just follows the creek where people don't live or go to visit. Then this station, you have to cross this major street if you actually want to get to the hospital. But it's still a decent location, still decent, but And then this station looks decent and better than most of the other ones, even though it's right next to the giant freeway still. And then the light rail continues along the freeway. And for example, if you want to get from Lover's Lane Station to where, say, you live on this side of the freeway, you have to walk all the way up to Lover's Lane or all the way down to University Boulevard, then go around. So it's basically only useful if you're going to any of the destinations on this side, but if you live on the west side of the freeway, you're kind of screwed. And then there's the Southern Methodist Mockingbird Station, which, again, is across the freeway from Southern Methodist University. So say you go to school there and you want to take the train downtown because you're in college, you don't have a car, but it's still like at least a 10-minute walk to go all the way across the freeway and then up to the station. And again, it just follows the freeway, but it looks like there's still like some cool shops around here, a lot of houses, a lot of like residential and commercial, just different areas where people would actually go to and from. But because they had to build it under the freeway here, because that was where they could acquire the land cheaply, they didn't build a station here, which would have been a perfect location because it was too expensive to build a station because underground transit stations are incredibly expensive. But you actually have some shops over here, have like a tall building over there. And even though it's not great, it's still better than most of the other places along this line and would probably have decently high ridership. But if you keep going, it's not until you get all the way down here to City Place where you have the next station. And this again is right along the highway, so if you want to get to the stuff on this side of the highway, you have to cross the freeway, walk along these major roads that probably aren't the nicest, most walkable. Yeah, like walking along this just seems depressing as hell, not something you'd want to do. And if you keep going farther south, again, it just goes past the freeway, and finally you have a bunch of stations downtown, which is where people are supposed to be coming to and from. But if none of the other train stations in the outer parts of the city serve useful areas, then no one's going to ride it downtown. And so then you go through downtown, and then you have this station, which looks alright, And then it proceeds to follow the Cedar Creek here. So the station's just between a parking lot, a creek, and like if we look at it at the station here, yeah, you just see the parking lot. Doesn't really look like there's much around. There's like a warehouse over there. Just looks kind of depressing and not somewhere that people are actually going to or from. And then it just follows the creek because that's where it was cheap to acquire the land and cheap to build. And even if you're going to the zoo over here, you have to cross under this giant overpass to get to the zoo. And instead of had they built it over on this side of Marcellus Avenue, you would have had to just cross across this minor road rather than walking all the way across this overpass. And then it follows the creek, and then there's another station here. And you keep going. You have a few more stations in residential areas, and then you get to the end at Oak Cliff and Westmoreland, where there's maybe 2 or 3 different destinations and stations that were actually in good locations, but most of the time it just follows the creek and freeways and a bunch of empty areas where people aren't actually coming to or from. So in contrast to Dallas's Red Line, now we're going to look at why the Houston Metro Rail's Red Line is so successful. So first we're going to start at the southern end. And so it starts at this park and ride, which probably isn't great, but then the next station you have at 2 different sports stadiums. You have the NRG Stadium and the Astrodome. And then you have the NRG Center over here, and you have a bunch of just like denser residences on this side. There's a retirement community, so places where people are actually going to go, even though there's a giant parking lot here. I mean, Houston and Dallas both are pretty car-centric cities, but having a station right next to the stadium means people can actually just take the light rail to the different sports events, whether it's a football game or whatever they want to go see. And then next, you have a station here, which uh, doesn't look that great. Again, you have some parking lots, but still, at least there's like denser apartments on this side. And then next, you go towards the medical center, and here, it's a giant job center. A lot of people would commute there for work, and if you want to live in another neighborhood along one of the other stations that the light rail serves, like it's super easy and convenient, drops you off in the heart of the area. There's a lot of stuff around it, actually a convenient place where people are going to go to or from. Then you have this station over here between the Children's Memorial Hospital and Rice University, so it's easy for college students to just take the light rail downtown. And then the next station is there's like a Japanese garden and nice parks, and at the north end of Rice University. So again, a place where people are actually going to or from. And here's the museum district, a major attraction. A lot of people want to visit the museums there. If you don't have a car, it's just easy hop on the light rail from downtown, and it's a pretty dense corridor. Like if we look at it here, there's some like decently tall buildings, like places that people are actually gonna live or go to and from. And then if we go farther up, notice how it's going along the streets and not just along a freeway or a river, because Houston actually invested in putting their light rail in places where people are gonna go. So then you go farther up, then you have another station along, um, maybe not the best that's next to the freeway, but it's still a dense area, still a dense corridor. And then here, right in the heart of Midtown, you have another station. It's a very dense area, lots of a nice park over here, lots of apartment buildings and different residences, shops, all sorts of stuff in the area. And yeah, it looks like a dense place where people are actually going to or from, at least comparatively to where Dallas's light rail stops go. And this one again looks close to downtown. Sure, there's like a parking lot here, but it's Houston. It's a car-oriented city. You're gonna have parking lots throughout a lot of the city. And then you go through downtown, serving the major commercial center of the city, where a lot of people are commuting to and from. And then you have a station right at the University of Houston downtown. And then you have another couple stations right here. It's sure, it's not in the best area, probably more useful, but it looks like there's a bus station here, so maybe a lot of people are commuting, using the bus to get to and from there. Then this looks like it's in a really particularly dense area, lots of houses around, right in the heart of North Main Street, a couple of barber shops, an elementary school, places where people actually are going to and from. And again here, the station at Fulton North Central, there's a ton of residences around, a bank, some shops, a meat market, and then you keep going, and it follows these major streets that are like the anchors of their community. And here you have a ton of residences and houses around it, places where people are actually going to and from. And still here continues along just a major artery at Fulton Street, going through the heart of these residential neighborhoods where people live. Again, still going through these residential neighborhoods. Then it ends at this shopping center at Northline Transit Center. And there's a lot of houses over here. And sure, there's a big parking lot, but at least it serves as a focal point between the houses to the east. And there's a ton of department stores, and it looks like there's a mall and a Walmart over here to the west. In addition to building a network along corridors where people actually live and would want to travel to, in 2015, Houston revamped its bus network in its entirety to connect bus routes to light rail stations and facilitate easy bus to rail transfers, further incentivizing public transit usage. So as we can see, Dallas took the short-sighted route to build cheaply out to the suburbs, leaving behind those who would be most dependent on public transit. This led to low ridership per mile and a system that serves many parking lots and warehouses, but not where people actually live. Houston was smarter and built to where people needed to travel, improving transit along its denser corridors and leading to a higher ridership per mile. While Dallas's system failed to serve its residents successfully, Houston's system is a great example of how to build light rail. Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be coming out with more videos soon.